All right, so let's jump in. Today's topic is the question around should or how would you leave OmniFocus for an analog system? And I will be the first to tell you that although I have made that move, I will not encourage everyone to make that move. It is not something that I think is for everyone, and there are some very specific scenarios where I don't think you should. And we'll talk about those specifically, but what I want to do is walk through 3 different levels, okay? There's a high level, which is kind of a philosophy level, which I have spent a lot of time talking about just in general public scenarios here lately. There's a middle level, which kind of takes that philosophy and shows us like the general, like from a conceptual stance, how would these pieces apply? And then there's the tactical level at the very bottom, the low level, where this is boots on the ground. This is how the actual stuff happens. And I want to walk you through those 3 scenarios. We're going to use OmniFocus as a lens into this. I've worked with tons of different digital task managers, and there's a lot of different ways that these concepts will translate to Todoist, Asana, Trello, a bunch of these different sections. Peter has a great point, like repeating tasks. I'll write that down. We'll cover that. I have that one solved on my side because I'm a huge repeating task fan. One thing I want to point out here is the mechanics of how this is working. I'm not one that likes to just put together a webinar and I'm going to go through it and we're going to do questions at the end. No, I want this to be a back and forth. And one thing I want to point out is like the way that I'm operating this particular webinar, it needs to be a two-way street. So if you have a question, put it in the chat. Another quick plug, if you haven't already, click the poll in the chat. Let me know where you're currently at. But if you like the format and how this is working back and forth and how this system operates, check me out on Twitch. I don't intend this to be a big sales thing. There are some things that I'm doing that I'm going to talk about because a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, we talk about on Twitch or we talk about on Analog Joe, or these are things that I'm doing a lot of. This format, the way that you're seeing this operate, is exactly what I do on Twitch. It's not gaming, it's not anything specific, but I do a lot of desk cam stuff, and we talk bullet journaling, or this last week we did a big rant on Rome research. I have lots of thoughts on these different systems. So I just want to point out that this particular format is exactly what we do on Twitch. I'm just offering it to you in a different format here today. So that out of the way, let's talk high level. And I want to start here with the concept of digital tools versus analog tools. And they have very differing ways that you can come at deciding which one you should and shouldn't choose. And the Rome rant, I'm actually working on editing down and posting as a YouTube video. That'll be interesting. With digital tools, it's ubiquitous. This is not an unknown. If you're coming from OmniFocus or another digital task manager, this is one that's very commonly seen as the best pro for using a digital task manager. You can have it everywhere with you. I would hold up my phone now, but it's a camera. So you can set these things up to be in your pocket. You can have all of your lists with you all the time. This is completely opposite of an analog system. As I will show you in my notebook, I don't keep near as much stuff in it as I did in OmniFocus. When we look at OmniFocus and then I look at the notebook, you'll see that the sheer list of things is drastically smaller in the notebook, and that's by design. And we'll talk about that design. And so ubiquity, having absolutely everything with you at all times. You can do it with an analog system, but it is going to require carrying around a physical notebook. Welcome, Carol. Glad to have you on board here. So having the notebook with you is going to force you to carry more physical things. And of course, a notebook is almost always bigger than your phone. So it's going to have that downside. Going digital versus analog, you can get into collaboration. Now, OmniFocus is not there in allowing that in its entirety. I know there was a promise, I think late last year about, or no, it was early last year, about bringing shared projects and stuff. I don't believe that's out in its entirety at this point. I haven't been 100% in keeping up with OmniFocus in recent months, but I don't believe that is actually out. Thank you for confirming that, Michael and Jonathan. So, like, that is the thing that is not available in OmniFocus. But if you're in Todoist, if you're in Trello, if you're in a lot of these other systems, that is a thing, and you can do that. It also means that you can, with OmniFocus for web, you can access your database from anywhere. So having the ability to access it on Linux or iPhone or Android or a Mac, like, you can get it anywhere using that OmniFocus for web. So that's a big deal for a lot of people. You're not going to do that with an analog notebook. Now, you can keep the notebook with you all the time. That's what I do. But that's not a thing and a habit that everybody wants to adopt. Now, I have a lot of reasons for why I choose to do that. Again, we'll get into that. One thing that I've been talking about a lot lately is when you go digital, from a philosophical stance, you have to be okay with features changing. This is an accepted default answer that a lot of people take on without realizing that they've taken it on. When I start using OmniFocus, I have now subjected myself to the Omni Group's choices in feature sets. And that feature set is one that I can either adapt and morph to or be forced to adapt and morph to. Now, OmniFocus has a lot of different ways that you can work. Just as an example, in the chat, I want you to type in, if you're using OmniFocus, whenever you work from a list in OmniFocus, are you pulling up tags? If you are, type tags in the chat. If you're working from perspectives, type perspectives in the chat. Or if you're working from straight a project, just type in projects. Whichever one you use most of the time, go ahead and type that in the chat. So I'm seeing perspectives, tags, forecast. That's a good point. The projects list, perspectives, tags. This is my point. Forecast, the inbox. Paul, come on, Paul. So here's the thing. Here's my point. Everybody uses these things differently because of the massive feature set that's inside of OmniFocus. It makes it possible for you to work in a lot of different ways, which is amazing. I mean, that's one of the hallmarks and one of the great things about OmniFocus is there's just so many different ways that you can use it. But that's also the downside, because the moment they made the shift, here's an example. When they went from contexts to tags, Tom has a point here too. This is actually part of what started to deviate me away from OmniFocus and what made me start thinking about this particular topic, in that when they shifted from context to tags, I was a diehard context fan. Like, that was me. That was what I always focused on. And even when they went to tags, I was only using one tag for a given task or anything in there. And later, I even just completely dropped context/tags entirely. So by moving to tags, it opened up the doors to a lot of different ways that you could use it. And it meant that it was possible to track even more things inside of OmniFocus. That's the design. The design is to allow you to track everything in it. The problem is it allows you to track everything in it, and then you don't always know which things you're supposed to be working on when. That's a lot of what I struggled with in OmniFocus. Another thing that comes with using digital task managers is when you're looking for information on how to use them. You know, say me in the chat if you followed me because of OmniFocus back in the day. You know, that's a thing. Like, so many people have followed me because of what I wrote online and the courses and the things that I've done online for OmniFocus. I love OmniFocus. I'm sitting here with the OmniFocus mug. Like, I have an affinity towards OmniFocus, still do today, even though I'm not using it. And that is because I love the tool. The problem with following a creator, and if you follow me for a long time, like now you know that I'm on bullet journaling, but that's part of the issue. If you take any of these productivity creators or groups that are writing for and about apps and services, generally they will write and develop courses and such for the apps and tools that they personally love to use. But eventually you get tired of writing about it. I experienced this myself. I got burnt out writing and developing content for OmniFocus, and I felt like I had done everything I could for OmniFocus. And some of my writing and development of courses and such for it were simply to help myself stay motivated to use the tool. I was always terrible at doing a weekly review, so I wrote about reviews quite a bit. And a lot of other creators get to be in the same boat. I'm not one that has done this as much, but a lot of creators will shift tools. And they will go from using, say, OmniFocus to using Todoist, or GTD to, I'm tired of writing about GTD and falling in that group, so I'm going to make up my own thing and call it ZTD. I mean, it's not a diss on Leo and Zen habits, but moving to ZTD and just using a tweaked version of it, like that's what a lot of creators will do, because their job is to think about these things and deviate from the norm and write about it. Because if they deviate from it, it gives you something to read and click on, and then you get excited about it. And you're like, oh, that looks interesting. I want to try that. And it's like, oh, Joe's using a dashboard. That actually makes a lot of sense. I'm going to use that. What happens is you start moving and following people quite regularly. And the more I write and talk about things, the more interested you are in it, and then you start using it too, which is exactly what I want as a creator. But what happens when I get tired of the next thing? When I get tired of Todoist and go on to Trello, when I get tired of Trello and go to Asana, and then get tired of Asana and come back to OmniFocus, you end up being promoted into following that path and coming along for the ride with me. And I'm purely doing it simply because I need more to write about, and I got bored writing about that one particular tool. Now, I'm not saying everybody does that. That's a generalization. If you look at the bulk of people in the productivity community, that's a lot of what happens. I don't think a lot of people realize they're doing it. I don't think it's intentional, but I think that's what a lot of folks end up doing. So with feature sets changing, with content creators moving from app to app and tool to tool, what happens is the foundation of your task management system moves and it shifts on you, and it can get out of hand. And every time the foundation, the feature set moves, you have to either adapt to that or completely change your tool. And I'm guessing that more than a couple of us have shifted tools because of a feature set change. And in my case, I did that whenever OmniFocus shifted over to tags. Now, it took me a while to actually make the move and realize I needed to make the move, but moving to tags is what shifted me off of OmniFocus in the long run. So this is all the high level, okay? So the philosophy behind digital versus analog, that's a lot of the digital side. The analog side, yes, I use a digital calendar, Diego. The analog side of it is that when I'm writing things on pen and paper, I have to think about what I'm going to write, because I don't want to write everything down. So I'm more particular with what I will choose to put on, say, that today list. Whereas previously, using the dashboard system, it would just dump 35, 40, 50 things on my list for the day, just automatically, routines and habits and such that I wanted to have done that day. With the analog system, you have to be a lot more mindful with what you're choosing to put on your plate, simply because you don't want to write 50 things down every single day. You don't want to do that. So you have to take the time to decide what is worth putting on your list that day and what's not. That simple, tiny mindfulness piece is one that has me pretty solidly in the pen and paper category. Okay? All right, so that's high level. Let's move on to a step down, okay? And then we're going to get to the tactical, which is way more fun. Yes, digital solutions try to force a way to use it. Absolutely. And that's part of what I'm getting at is digital solutions, that foundation can move. They're going to force you to how that system should work. Whereas the pen and paper systems, it's your foundation is pen and paper. The way you use it can change, and it's okay, and it doesn't completely wreck the way you operate. So your workflow can stay there. All right, the middle ground, what and how you track, okay? There are some very specific categories here. I wrote down 6. I'm sure there's potentially more. Life mission. These are the actual technicals of what we're putting inside that overall philosophy. So your life mission, in the world of OmniFocus, and I'll show this as soon as we get done walking through these. You can write down things in a specific project in OmniFocus, or you can write them on a single page, but you're tracking your life mission in some form. Once you get to that level, if you're following David Allen and such, like you tend to start at the runway and you work your way up to Horizon 5. I'm kind of reversing it. So you got the Horizon 5, the big overall pieces that you're trying to track. And then I wrote down like goals and routines. I kind of lump those together because not everybody likes the term goals, me being one of them. But you're kind of looking at what's coming up in the next year to 5 years. I have a hard time seeing that far out. So for me, I tend to look at like the next month to 3 months or so. That's about as far out as I ever go. But also managing routines. And kind of going along with that, the next one would be habits. Tracking and managing routines and habits. These are things we do both in OmniFocus and in the world of bullet journaling. Tracking ideas. Someday maybe lists is pretty common with the world of OmniFocus and GTD. So tracking ideas is definitely a big one. Something I do a ton of. A daily list. This is probably the most common and most practical one that we talk about. Again, type in the chat if you've used my dashboard system. Using that dashboard or an available list or a today list or a perspective of some kind. Using those systems are ones that are super handy. The dashboard system is pretty slick, when you stop and look at it. But in some form or another, you have a list of some sort that you're working from today. That's why I was asking about the perspective versus tags versus projects. Like where you choose to work in that day in OmniFocus can move and flex around. In the world of pen and paper, it really doesn't. You're going to create one place that you're going to do that each day, for the most part. There are definitely some exceptions to that. I have exceptions to that. The last piece here is review and reflection. Raise your hand if you love doing reviews. Some people do. I know very few, but I wrote and did a lot about reviews because it was a thing I struggled with. And it was a piece that Derek nailed it. Crickets. So very few people absolutely love doing reviews. I don't at all. And yet I have found a way to do a reflection point of sorts on a regular basis with pen and paper when I really, really struggled with it in OmniFocus. So what I'm getting at is something that I have learned is that by moving over to pen and paper, I'm pointing over here because this is where my notebook is. The pen and paper setup is one that I have been using regularly since mid-March. I think I've missed 2, maybe 3 days of writing out a daily list, and I have yet to miss a reflection point without trying. Like, I haven't had to write about it and talk about it like I used to do with OmniFocus. So I think I'm at the point now where I can comfortably say this is just built in, and I kind of expect and look forward to that. Whereas I never had that perspective whenever I was working with OmniFocus. Now, let's go down another level, okay? It's kind of the mid-level, like what you're tracking. Let's look at how those specific pieces are tracked. So let's shift over here to OmniFocus. And OmniFocus, I opened it up and it was like, we have lots of updates for you. It's like, yeah, I get it. But this is where I left it, okay? So I have done nothing to this. I have not tried to clean it up. I haven't tried to keep it updated in any form. I haven't tried to, hide anything from you here. This is the real thing that I had set up prior to moving to bullet journaling. And I want to talk to you here at the end of how I actually made that move, okay? So one of the pieces here, that life mission piece, like those overarching high-level horizons, that's what you can see here on the screen. So right here, Horizon 5, 4, and 3, these were what I had set up in my OmniFocus system prior to making the move to the bullet journal. And this is fairly straightforward. There's nothing here that I would say is complicated in any form. It's just a simple list. And I don't have this formally transferred over into pen and paper systems because what I have learned is that moving to pen and paper systems, I'm more apt to look at the next month to 2 months maybe. And the concept of Horizon 4 and Horizon 3 really doesn't apply very well. Horizon 5 does, but that one is at such a high level that to me it doesn't really warrant a whole page, in a notebook. I'm better served to simply know it. And I consider it whenever I'm doing a monthly migration, as it's called in the world of bullet journaling. So high-level missions, that's what I'm looking at here. Goals and routines, this kind of has some of the goals piece in it. Horizon 3 is probably where that would be. If I take a look at checklists here, these are some of those routines, okay? So like this is my morning routine. I suppose it would be this way. This is my morning routine. Doing some yoga in the morning, doing a Bible reading, prayer time, breakfast, and a meditation. These are the pieces that I had on that list. Now, in today's world, I don't write this list anywhere. It's just second nature, and I just tweak it as I go. I don't need an external list in this case to help me manage that. Same thing with like an afternoon checklist. Like, this is my point with OmniFocus. I don't want to say it's fiddly because it can be fiddly, but this isn't. I don't see this as a fiddly setup. This is purely trying to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. Moving to analog, I've learned that doesn't necessarily get me to do it. Maybe this is a factor of the ADD side of me and struggling to actually follow through on what it is that I have done here. Just type in the chat, yes, if you use checklists like this. Do a lot of you do this? Because this is something that I know I encouraged quite a bit, and I know that there are a number of people. Okay, so there's quite a few folks. Yeah. So I'm not going to tell you not to do this. I know that for me, it was a thing that overwhelmed me because I would have these things show up on that dashboard or an available list, which I'll show you here in a second. Setting these things up so that I always had that list and it would tell me what I needed to do, it ended up becoming not so much a checklist that you read and then do as much as a checklist that I would do and then verify. So a do verify list is what I ended up using. I promoted this for a long time. And when I got away from it, I realized how much of a relief it was to not have this level of detail. Because it was just, I would check things off to get it off the list more than I would actually follow through on it. Now, the downside of that is that it makes it more difficult to put true habits and routines in place. That's a thing that makes it difficult to do. I think I have maybe matured, maybe just changed my thinking. It's very possible. But I think having gone through enough habits and routine change type books for Bookworm, it has taught me that, yes, this can work, but most of the time it has more to do with, can I build in cues that are tied to other routines in order to help me to accomplish things? And doing that versus trying to put it on a list that I'm going to refer to every day seems to get me a lot further. So that's where I land. And I was very much like Tom here, who was just guilty of looking at things and would check it off just to get it off the list. Like that's what I did, to be completely frank and honest with you. So that is where I've landed. So anyway, what I'm getting at is routines. I don't track this in analog. I don't. And I'll show you my notebook here in a second. Where am I at on here? Habits. This I feel like I keep pointing the wrong direction. This is, I think, where a lot of habits and stuff would fall. You know, there are some like a weekly review here, a whole habit list. Uh, Again, I have a few checklists that I keep in the bullet journal, and I will run those at certain times. But what I'm referring to by habit tracking is more of like, did I meditate today? Did I exercise? Did I take my medication? Did I all these things? Like that is what I want to make sure that I'm accomplishing. I don't know that I have ever had a real clean way of tracking habits in OmniFocus. Like there are ways to do it. I have seen people do it. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. I think that for me, I just haven't found a way that I could see enough of the habit tracking history to help me like build the chain up and such. So I can't say that in OmniFocus I've ever had a clean way of doing that. I definitely have some really cool ways to do that in my notebook. So that's definitely something I want to show you, and it's kind of fun. So as far as habit tracking, that's what we've got there. A someday maybe list. I started back in the day putting these in here. I guess that's a bad one. Let's go here. I started putting someday maybes inside these areas of focus. And Michael, you're confessing to a thing I've done in the past, just clicking review on everything to get it out of the list. I would keep track of all of my someday maybes in this format, as you can see. And it's set up this way in the latest course, I believe. And there's still people that buy the Working with OmniFocus course, and you can still do that if you want. Just know it's not going to be updated because I'm not using it, and it's hard for me to support it and keep it up to date. So I would keep someday maybes in this format. In the world of bullet journaling and analog systems, it's pretty straightforward. You just create a separate page and do the same. And again, I can show you that as well. Another piece is like that daily list that we were talking about. In OmniFocus, what I was using is this available list, which is just another term for the dashboard. I just started referring to it as available, as like these are the tasks that are available to me to work on, kind of trying to alleviate some of that stress of, Joe, you're not getting all this done. That's essentially what I was trying to do, just trying to name things in that way. I do not use time blocking. I just go off of a to-do list, and I don't really use priorities in it, Diego. And then Dave, you're absolutely correct. Going analog does not necessarily mean doing Bujo. I'm a good example of that. I have some core bullet journal routines and tasks and spreads and stuff that I use. I have some that are not at all. And I will try to clarify those whenever we're looking at them. Okay, so I would work off of this available list day to day. You can see like some editorial calendar stuff that I didn't get done, posting things for Bookworm. I mean, there's a ton of stuff here that obviously it's been months since I came in here, so there's a lot of stuff that's now overdue and such. So, and like this neutralized deal, like these are just routine things I was doing around the house and would show up on the list automatically. I have ways of managing routine tasks, which I think is fairly simple and straightforward in pen and paper systems, but this is kind of hard to replicate without really thinking it through and trying to use a paper system. I do not, Vic, use a note-taking app for checklists. I've been keeping them in the notebook. I shouldn't say that. I have a couple very specific checklists that I need to print off because they're long, namely like a packing list. And those I just have in a markdown file on my computer. I use multi-markdown composer to open those and edit those. So with things like these someday maybe lists, like, yes, you could use apps. Peter's got a good point here. It's like you can use different apps to automatically add things to them. I find that I'm more considerate of what I put on lists whenever I go pen and paper. Now, one last thing I want to point out here, review and reflection. And the review here, I mean, obviously this is completely full because I've not reviewed any of them at this point. But there are a lot of different things that I have issues with on this. I even tried to script my way out of this how many times to where I could set certain review schedules. Like this is a thing, Tim Stringer shares this all the time, that scheduled reviews script that I wrote. And if I were to go back to OmniFocus, I would definitely use that to try to schedule things. I don't think I would set up a weekly review, and I will show you why in the notebook, because I've learned that monthly is way more effective for me. Trying to do things on a weekly basis is just too short a time frame. And I think it's, as much as we talk about things move fast today, for someone like me who works in IT and has disasters show up daily and things are never able to be scheduled, trying to plan out a week is impossible. Like I never know. Like when we're done here, I'm going in to set up for an event tonight that came about this week. Like it was decided to do it on Tuesday. So if I had set everything up last Friday or Sunday or even Monday, it wouldn't have been on the list, and now the whole week is adjusted as a result of that. Whenever I don't plan week to week and I just look at the month as a whole, you can move and morph with things a lot easier. So that's why I've made that move. All right, let's set OmniFocus aside. I want to jump over here and I want to show you my notebook and how I'm using it to do a lot of these same things, okay? So here's the notebook. This is the setup that I'm currently using, okay? Now, if we look at these same pieces, all right, and I'll explain what I have going on here as much as I can. Carl Poline promotes. What's the principle? I don't know that one, Peter. So in the world of bullet journaling, a life mission or those overarching goals, you would set those on a month-to-month basis. Historically, and I'm bad at this, I have yet to learn how to do this. This is the concept of a future log, where you would have things set up on each month. So if you can read this, it's May, June, July, August, September, October. Now this one's out of date. I've since moved on to a different format for this, but this is the traditional canonical bullet journal way of doing it. This is why I say I deviate, because this is not what I do. This week, next week, this month, next 3 months. Oh, I like that concept. That's a good one. I don't think I would look at next week. I would look at this week, this month, and next 3 months. That's probably what I would do. I would simplify it further. So I have deviated from that particular piece of it. Thanks, Gary. I didn't mean to promote my birthday. It was not intentional. Oh gosh, I don't even know when it is. It's a week from this next Wednesday, I think is when it is, the 30th. So as far as life mission and stuff goes, like you can write that into your bullet journal, but I don't. Now, the trick is like, how do you find these things? Because in OmniFocus, you can just click down the list and find things. Say I did put it into a specific spot. This is the index. This is the core of how a bullet journal person will find things. You just turn to the next page in the notebook, start doing your thing, come back here and write down where it's found. So like I know that the next, like that future log that I was talking about at the very beginning, the next one, the one that I followed it up with, is right here. Future log, it's on page 126. So I can shift up to page 126. That is the new setup that I'm using. And if we want, I can explain how that particular one works. But that's not my point. You use the index to find things throughout the notebook. That is like one of the canonical ways of using a bullet journal. Now, again, I deviate from the specifics here. So from a life mission, you would set up the overarching piece. Goals, you could do the same thing. You could, and where a lot of people will put this is it is the Alistair method, Dave. Nailed it. We actually did a whole session on the Alistair method on Analog Joe. So if you're interested in that. You can, and a lot of people do this, whenever they set up this monthly view, they will write what the goal for the month is, or potentially multiple. Like you could take this whole thing and shift it down a little bit. My hand's kind of in the way. You could take this whole thing and shift it down, and then that would give you more space here, and they would write that down. A lot of people will do that. So that is a piece that I know I don't do. I tend to just know what I'm after in that particular month, and it tends to move sometimes mid-month. So that's not a thing that I feel like I'm ready for. I'm still like trying to work my way to those points. Routines, again, we talked about that earlier. I don't really put them here. If I do have routines here, it's based on habits, which the habits piece, which is just the next one. Let's take a look at how I track habits and such. This is always a piece that people really like. And I'll show you the other page here in a second. So this is the list of habits that I'm currently tracking. And again, this is a deviation from the normal of a bullet journal. And this particular one, what I have is these are the things I'm tracking. These are the days of the month. And I write them on the dots. I don't know if you probably can't see the dots on here very well, but I write them on the dots. That way I can put the actual dots whenever I complete it for that day. So it's just a simple cross-referencing system. That's all that is. I have looked at the Hyatt Full Focus Planner, Gary. I'm just not a fan of those dedicated planners. I like the completely generic ones because then I can do whatever I want with them. I like the flexibility of these, which, by the way, this is a Leuchtturm 1917, if anybody's curious. They are also the ones that make the branded bullet journal notebooks, which I don't see the point in. They're just, a little more expensive. It's just me. So that is how I track habits. Every morning, I look at this and I write down if I completed those yesterday or not. The other thing I do is this fancy little thing, which I stole from somebody else. It's very similar. Scale of 1 to 10, going that way. Days of the month. Sleep, mood, stress. This is, again, a deviation from standard bullet journaling. But in my case, I'm simply tracking my sleep across the top, and I have a line there to help me manage, like, am I getting 8 hours or not? Because I don't use a digital tracker for it. I'm just writing sheer volume, number of hours that I was able to sleep. And you can see I've had a couple rough nights here in the recent weeks. My mood and stress, generally those are inversely related, but it's kind of cool to see how those follow each other. So as far as tracking, that's what I do. This is a view that I don't feel like I can get very easily with OmniFocus. There are people who have figured out how to graph some things. Oh, again, pardon me. In OmniFocus, I've never gone down that road. It's too much to try to make that work. This is how I do it. And it's very straightforward, I think. I think my camera just stopped. There it goes. Is it going to catch up? Aw, come on, camera. Be nice. So what I'm getting at here, see if this will catch up, is this particular setup has the ability to do that tracking. Another one that we have talked about a little bit here is the concept of managing an ideas list or a someday maybe list. And if this camera will catch up. That's kind of weird that it did that. Come on now. Sorry, guys. I haven't had that issue in a long time. Acts like it's fine. There we go. That was kind of weird. So as far as like a someday maybe list, sorry for that delay. One of the things that I will do, let me see if I can find a good one here. Books to read, page 48. Okay. So I can flip to page 48. Here's a list of books I've written down to read. Some of these we have completed. Some of these, one of them is on the list to read for Bookworm, namely The Minimalist Home by Joshua Becker is one that's coming up soon. this is all it is. I mean, it's not anything fancy. I mean, it's just purely a list on a page. And you saw how I found it. It's just in the index. That's it. You started a manual Bujo and GoodNotes on digital. That's, I have heard of people using iPads and such for, oh yeah, iPad Pro. Oops, sorry. iPad Pros and such to do a bullet journal-esque system. And there are also folks, Mike Schmitz being one of them, who build like these modular systems so that they can move physical pages around inside the notebook. Personally, that's not for me. I get it. I mean, it can be a nice hybrid system. So I don't know that it's bad for any reason or not, but it's just preference. Like, my preference is the actual physical notebooks. I've always struggled with writing on a screen, like taking a pen and actually like writing on glass. Like, that doesn't do well. Side note, TWSBI Eco, have to. I just have to. Has an architect grind on it from the one and only nib grinder. There's that. So this is how I manage like ideas list and someday maybe list, or it's I didn't intend it. I'm not sponsored. It's just a thing. It's a good point, Derek. I'm not trying to. I just love the pens. The thing about putting ideas list and such in the notebook is you always want things in that index at the front. This is more difficult, obviously. Like, you saw how I had to go about finding that in the bullet journal system versus just clicking on it in OmniFocus. So just very different. A daily list, okay? This is where in the world of OmniFocus you would have that dashboard of sorts. In the world of the bullet journal, I'll show you a full set. It looks like this. So take your pick of a day. Let's just go here. It's a little bit easier to see anyway. This was my list for Monday. You're just creating a list of things to do that day. That's it. And you just have indicators based on which ones you got done and which ones you're moving forward. For me, I don't use the bullet journal dots, the actual bullets that they use. I use dashes. I use Patrick Roan's Dash Plus system. Say Dash Plus in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. So I use Patrick Roan's Dash Plus system, which in this case is kind of a deviation even from that. Oh, we got some Dash Plus fans. That makes me so happy. Dash is, of course, for everything. You put a line down from top to bottom, like, where's a good one? There. That's the one I've completed. The arrow away from the task is whenever I'm moving it to a different list. Okay. Tom, I am kind of doing rapid logging. I sometimes will have, and I don't think I see one. I know they're in here. I just am not seeing it. If it's a triangle, that's when it's just a point, kind of like a journal entry item of this happened that day. So it kind of becomes that. I have had times when, and I don't have them here, where I'll draw a line at the bottom. So like there would be a line underneath the bullets here, and that would be a point where I made my list top to bottom, and then I stopped and I made that line. And then if I'm adding to that list, that's kind of a capture. It ends up becoming an inbox for the day. So if you're used to the OmniFocus inbox and then processing things, this inbox would then be on that daily list. So you only have one place you're working for the day. And then the trick here is that when I go to this last piece here, this review and reflection, there's 2 points for review. One is daily. One is for monthly. So there is no weekly in canonical bullet journal. If you do a search for the hashtag bullet journal anywhere, you will see tons and tons of weekly spreads. That is not the core of what Ryder Carroll pointed out. That is a slight deviation from what he did. Now, when you're doing that migration point for the end of the day, or say the next morning, in my case, what I do, anything that isn't crossed off either goes to the next day's list, so you rewrite it which I will tell you is great motivation to try to get things done so you don't have to rewrite it, which is weird to say because it's super minor. Or you can move it to a monthly task list. And that's what I end up doing here. So this ends up being a task list that I'm working on for the month. In this case, project lists that I'm working on. Actually, I've got a couple of those that are completed now. But those are things that I'm working on. So this is fairly involved if you're first getting into like a pen and paper system. But it's also not near as involved as some people do. Ed, yes, I'm using the exact same notebook. This is the one and only notebook that I take with me everywhere. And whenever I have meeting notes, again, you simply write the title at the top. Actually, there's a project there. I'll come back to that. And then I would write down what that meeting was and put a date next to it here. Actually, I don't always put the dates, but that's what I would do that. So that would always go here. Also, whenever I'm planning a project or have ideas for a project, this is a good one. I will take those notes here. And this is actually a project I'm still working on, but it's a layout for a wood stove I'm building in the backyard. It's so hard to do something like this in OmniFocus because like here, like I know all the plans I have for this, and there are times when I will just have a task list down at the bottom or on the next page, and I will have those just all tied together. And then on the daily list, whenever I'm here, I would just say work on stove project, page 36, and it would tell me to go to that page and work on that project. But again, that's starting to get into some of the more depths of how you could manage those things. The beauty of that I'm getting at here is you can do this a whole bunch of different ways. There doesn't have to be just a single way that you can do this. Okay. I want to point out repeating tasks. That kind of works me through. Oh, I forgot to mention monthly migration. When you're doing the daily, I'm moving things either to the next day or that previous month or the monthly list, which I was showing here, okay? When October comes around, October 1st, I recreate these lists, okay? So I would go to a brand new spread, go to the index, write things down there, and then I will recreate this, which is just a journal of what's happening each day, and I don't have to fill it in. It's just a one-liner journal for each day, so you have something to look at. This is my recurring task trick that I'll talk about here in a second. And then I rebuild my trackers and my project/task list. There are some things I do here which are, again, deviations, things I just want to keep track of. A waiting for list, which you're probably used to in OmniFocus. A remember list, memento mori, and I try to remember that bad days happen. Just things I want to remember each day, and whenever I'm filling out the trackers, I see that. So it's a reminder. And then I tend to write down if I see adjustments that I want to make to my bullet journal system, I'll write them down here. But again, these are all just, I just wanted to, so I put it in there. I had room for it and did it. That's all it is to do there. You migrated a task for 3 days before you took time to write up the details. Yes, this is an absolute true point. If you were to look through, so if you go back to the video and look at those tasks, those days, how many of those tasks moved 4 or 5 times, and then all of a sudden it got done? And it was because I was just sick of rewriting it. I didn't ever get sick of looking at something in OmniFocus day after day. I would just defer it again. It was too easy to defer it. So I wouldn't do that. Sleep, mood, and stress, Vic. So monthly migration, you're just recreating these for the next month. And again, when you do that, you can change things. But the beauty of that is whenever you do this, you really want these done. Like you want as many of these projects and tasks done as you can because you don't want to have to rewrite them. So that's something that I've learned. Dave, I think it absolutely can. I have been managing some pretty high level tasks because what you're seeing from me on some of these pages where I've got these daily logs, there are quite a few project level tasks there that I'm flipping to other pages almost daily to look at a project list and work off of those. So you're only seeing a small piece of the actual tasks that I have managed in this notebook. There's a ton in here. And you start flipping through the actual Like, there's the process of rebuilding analog Joe. Like, there's just tons of information that's built up in here. Let's look at that recurring piece. I know that's one that a lot of people in this group, again, type in repeating in the chat if you use repeating like habits or repeating tasks in order to maintain the like chores and things you need to do around the house and such. See, like this is a common thing. All right. Yeah, people use a tracker for it. So the Frankenlog, I want to introduce you to this. Yes, Tom. So the way this works, and a lot of people have struggled with how to do repeating or especially recurring tasks that are on a non-normal schedule. So, for example, you have something that repeats every 3 days or every 5 days or every third week. Like, that sort of thing is one that hangs a lot of people up when they move to pen and paper. This system can solve that. So again, the days of the month, I tend to write the letter of the day of the week on there as well, just because it helps me to see what's going on. And then you'll see numbers next to each of those. These numbers correspond to these tasks. So here's a good people like this one. Trim beard. I got to keep the beard looking nice. My wife does not like it when it gets too long. Trim beard is number 9. If you look for number 9, it shows up about every 5, I think it's every 5 days. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5 days. So it shows up every 5 days on that list. Okay? What I do in the morning whenever I'm making my list for that day, I simply look at this. Okay? That's a recurring theme you'll notice. When you're building that daily list, you reference the other pieces here. So I look at this every morning. So today is the 18th. I simply ran down this list. It's the 18th. I see 4, 6, and 10. All right? So then I take number 4. I need to start laundry because I tend to take care of laundry on the weekends. So I moved that and I wrote it on my daily list. Number 6 is set up the announcement slides. So I work at a church. I was setting up the pre-service slides that roll. So I knew I needed to do that today because they're usually completed on Thursday. So I set them up on Friday. What was the other one? 10. I need to water a Christmas cactus. It's a plant sitting right here. Then I just like that. It gives me something that I can make sure I'm maintaining on a regular basis. So that's all this is. This is purely repeating tasks. The Frankenlog is what it's referred to as. I did not make this up. It's just a thing that someone else has developed. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Frankenlog.com if you want to see this particular setup. And that's how that works. Now, one piece that I have not done here that I want to, and a couple of you have pointed this out now, what if it's not every month? And what if it's in intervals that only have it showing up like once, maybe twice that month? Like, how do you know how often to put them when you're doing that migration? And what I need to do, and one thing that I've been looking at, is putting at the end of each of these what that repeat interval is. And if it's not on this list, putting the date of when it needs to happen next. So you can do that as well. But again, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. The main thing is knowing that you have a list somewhere that either has things within the month or a date next to it as to when it needs to happen. Some people will do... they'll take, if I go back to that other future log, this is the Alistair method. This is another way you can do that. So at even higher levels, if you had something happening, say, every 3rd month, you could, yeah, Carol's got a good point there. Brian Hazard, is he the one that made the Frankenlog, Dave? So what you can do, and some people I've seen will do this for a whole year, you write down things through this list, X off which month it belongs in and the day of that month. So it's my dad's birthday on December 21st. It's my youngest daughter's birthday on December 11th. Now, I don't have this one filled in because I just started using this, so I don't want to speak too much to this because I don't have a ton of experience with it, but that's what I'm doing here with this particular one. But these two particular setups, the Frankenlog and then this Alistair method, both of which are not bullet journaling. I mean, the bullet journal community has adopted them, but they're not standard bullet journal. So these are things that I've used to deviate because it's a thing I was looking for. I know that I build off of routine tasks, and apparently a lot of you do too. This is how I solve that. And I can tell you that by referencing these things, like the future log, you tend to reference once a month. When you're referencing this, when you do that monthly migration, when you go from September to October, this is a view that you'll look at and transfer anything that has an October X to the monthly set of lists, and then that would get transferred to the daily list. Do you see what I'm doing here? Like that migration point? Now, the thing I haven't talked about is that doing that migration is your opportunity to decide if it's worth rewriting or not. That's not a thing you do in OmniFocus. I have not found the parallel there. I don't know that there is a solid parallel. There's the repeating review pieces, but like we've talked about, it's difficult to just not click the review button. The mark reviewed button is just too elusive. Like if I just click the button, I can say I reviewed it because I glanced down through things and I didn't really read it and think it through. But taking the time to actually rewrite it forces you to think it through. Nick has a good point. Like rewriting it is a moment of contemplation. Like that's a good way to say that. That's where that comes in. So it forces me to slow down. I like to move very quickly through these things. You can't do that. That's the point. So some people like, I don't want to do migration. Some good friends of mine like the modular systems, and it's because they don't want to have to migrate things. I think that's a disservice to yourself. I think doing that actual migration and having to rewrite it or retype it in some form is important to making sure that you're engaging with the right thing in the right way. That's my preference. I feel like I'm slowly getting onto a soapbox. Apologies for that. That's a lot of what I wanted to say about, going from OmniFocus to analog. I could go on and on and on about this system. If that is something of interest to you, I don't want this to be a big thing about plugs, but if you are interested in that, analogjoe.com. Here, I'll put the thing up to make it easier for you. If you really want, we refer to ourselves as Team Analog. If you want to join that and learn more about like the details of how people are using pen and paper, that's a place to go. There's a community there. But again, I'm not trying to force you into that by any means. I just want you to be aware of it. That's where I've been focusing a lot of my energies, where we talk about this. And I have some cool guests coming on in the next month or two to talk about some cool systems that are even deviations from bullet journaling and stuff. So there's just a ton of different ways that you can use the pen and paper thing. But at the same time, like if you have to collaborate with other people, if you have to do some form of like reporting, or it's important to you to keep it on you at all times and not have to have a notebook, bullet journaling and analog systems are not for you. They're not. So I won't tell you that this is for everyone. I'm in a place where I'm able to have a notebook with me at all times. So I have that ability. Not everyone does. I understand that. I've just been able to carry notebooks and such with me for a long time. So it's not a big deal to me to have these with me at all times. Okay. I'm going to quit talking. If you have questions about anything specific, go ahead and type them in the chat. I will transition this back over here. And one last thing to say, like if you're not already and you want, you can check me out on Twitter or Instagram. Like these are pretty typical things. But yeah, I do a lot of posts, especially on Twitter. I've been posting some things and a few like custom videos and stuff there as well. So that is a thing if you're interested in that as well. The balanced viewpoint. Appreciate that, Andrew. Appreciate you saying you appreciate that. But yeah, there is a lot of intentionality and stuff that has to come with it. If I lose my notebook, I will ask someone to politely put me away. I do have like at the front, it's like, if you find this, please send it here, and put my address, phone number, email, everything in the front. It's like, please don't just throw this in the trash. So, yes, John, I do. So one of the things, and I haven't talked about it because I don't want to push bullet journaling itself too much, but one of the aspects of it that writer Carol calls out quite a bit is the ability to go back and look at what you did in the past. That's the nice thing about that tracker setup. I have a few times looked at months past and looked at the habit tracking and the sleep stress mood tracker, that graph that's going across the top, and seeing patterns. If you have those and you continue to track those, you can see patterns in them. And then I kind of get curious, like, okay, I had 3 days where I didn't sleep well. Why? What was going on? And then I can go reference the daily log and see what were the tasks, what were the journal prompts that I wrote down for that day. And it tells me quite a bit about what happened. I don't find myself doing that sort of thing with any form of digital tracker. But when I'm flipping through this notebook looking for other things, I will quite often stumble on things and think, wait, what? And then pry into it a little bit more. So yes, I do reference them quite a bit. Handle searching. You don't. And this is where, like, if you're spending time with it, like, I generally know what I'm looking for. Like, the index is definitely the thing that I will scan through. So if I flip to the index and I'm looking for something specific, usually I can flip through there and it will tell me where something is that I could go find that. Nick, tips for easing anxiety in the transition to analog. Your biggest blocker is the constant thought press of what am I going to do to miss or forget by getting out of OmniFocus. Yep, agree with you. I was terrified. But here's what I would tell you. With OmniFocus, you saw everything. At least I did. The way I set it up, I would see everything on my plate every day. You would see the list of the projects. You would see the list of available tasks. And there is so much in there that I think there's a level of anxiety that comes from using it. I shouldn't say with using OmniFocus. I should say a digital task manager, just in general. That's very, very general, okay? Because I've seen it from folks in Todoist. I've seen it from folks in Asana. I've seen it from folks in so many different scenarios that there is so much in it. There is so much that you could do that it's scary to think about letting go of that because you feel like you're going to drop the ball somewhere. And that I'm very uncomfortable with. I don't want to let someone down, and I'm afraid that if I leave the system where everything is in it, I will drop the ball. And here's what I have found. If you do two things, write things down daily. So that's a core tenet of the bullet journal. And I should know, if bullet journaling is something you're curious about and you want to know the philosophy behind the details, I'm summarizing at a very, very high level what's going on with it. There's a lot of intricacies to it. I keep this here for a reason. This book is one that I have found a lot of comfort in, just to help me understand, why is migration so important? Why are these things set up the way that they are? And going through that has shown me that when you write it down, you engage with it more and you're more likely to follow through on things. But you have that daily list that you work off of, and then your monthly setups are ones where you keep that long-term things, like your project list, your whatever it is, your recurring things, and you simply use those to create the daily list. The level at which you maintain that is up to you. I have learned to take it a step up. Don't be as detailed with tasks, which is a thing I've promoted in the past, of write description for Bookworm podcast. Take picture for Bookworm. I wouldn't do that. I would have a checklist and just say, run the checklist. And then that's all you have to rewrite. So it does help you in that sense. So I'm just saying, I understand the anxiety, being afraid to miss something because you're not having that full list. I get it. I do. I will tell you that when you make the move after 1 month, because that's Writer Carol's thing, if you're going to make the move to analog, you need to commit 1 month to it, because it's that monthly migration that is so important. Once you go through that, all the light bulbs go off and it clicks. But I don't think you can get that until you've done that 1 month on the pen and paper setup. So having it all there, to me, makes a lot of sense. But I don't think you'll miss things. I don't. A couple things that I use, we didn't talk about hybrid systems as much as I thought we would, but as far as like integrating analog with other tools, I will tell you I'm not 100% in pen and paper. It kind of sounds that way, and I'm kind of talking about it in that way, but I'm not. Right before we started recording and such, I mentioned I use the Do app, so it does the recurring pieces. For anyone with ADD, it's super important. So I do use that for things like I need to remember to start making bread tonight, and I need to do it at about this time. I will forget if I don't have things like that. OmniFocus used to throw me the alerts, but now I just use Do for those particular alerts. Same thing with a calendar, trying to remember dates in the future. Yes, I could do that with the bullet journal, and sometimes I do. But if it's an event that has information attached to it, specifically links, I still maintain a tickler digital file of things I just need to remember. Nick has a good point. It's like an addiction. I'm trying to get caught up on the chat here. Peter, Tom, you were searching for a place to schedule. Look for an app solutions, and you finally started using a Bujo, and it instantly feels different. So I feel like I engage with my projects and tasks significantly better with the bullet journal than I ever did with OmniFocus. I think that might be why doing a daily setup and setting my things up on a daily basis just kind of happens. I don't have to worry about trying to make sure that I'm looking at OmniFocus in the morning or any other tool. It just happens. Like it's not a thing that I have to really focus on. And the migrations, like I have to get my trackers and stuff set up for the next month. So the migration has to happen on the 30th or the 1st, one of those two, which I've been streaming those on Twitch too. So if you ever want to watch me set that up at the end of the month, I do that on Twitch as well. So I'm not trying to, it's all interconnected. I'm not trying to do a bunch of promos. It's just all interconnected. What else is here? The advantage of digital is that you can search for things. Yes. In Bulo, that's a new one. You mark things in the index. Yes. And you can always go search for things through that. Yeah, absolutely. The Twitch feed, yeah, still not an ad. I'm sorry, I'm not trying. Everything I do is like interconnected. And I wanted to do this webinar because I just have had a lot of questions from people who are curious about analog but haven't been willing to make that move. So I just wanted to show it to people. Like I could do it on the Analog Joe site. I could do it on Twitch, but it seems like some people are afraid of Twitch, and it seems weird to do it behind a paywall of people who are already on Team Analog. So it's like, we got to do a free webinar of some sort so we can have this conversation. So yes, there's that. I know, you go for it, Derek. Like you nail me to the wall. It's fine. I just want to be completely transparent here. I'm not trying to put it all on top of you. Okay, let's wrap up here because I know we're a little bit after, but I am going to be taking this recording and I'm going to be trying to get it up on YouTube. I don't think it's going to be up this weekend. It's probably going to be next week, likely Monday or something, because it takes a little bit to do all the encoding and editing and stuff. So this will be on YouTube. And again, if you're interested in actually diving into details of how people are using pen and paper systems and some deviations from bullet journaling and how to get started with it. Can you do like analog note-taking systems? Like we've even done a session on the Zettelkasten, like how to do a pen and paper Zettelkasten. That's a thing I've kind of played around with without much success, but it's a thing that you can do as well. But we have a lot of recordings already up on Analog Joe if you're interested in those. Again, I'm not pushing. So don't do that if it's not something for you. Hit me up on Twitter. Join the Twitch streams if you want. There's this type of conversation where we're having the chat back and forth. That's a lot of what Twitch is, if you're interested in that. Write things down daily and do the monthly migration. Those are the two things, Paul. So the monthly migration of moving things over, that's the big ones. Switch to analog to OmniFocus. That's awesome, Nick. I didn't expect that one. Great fun. All right. I appreciate you, team, for being here today. If you have other questions around digital versus analog or free webinar concepts as such, you can email me, joe@analogjoe.com, and I will get that personally, and then we can dive into it in deeper. Leave me comments, hit me up on Twitter, wherever it works best for you, and we'll keep moving forward. So if you're still on OmniFocus, love it to death. Again, I'm not a hater. Still a fan of the tool. It just doesn't work for me. I wish it did. But if you're interested in more of that, hit us up. All right. Thanks, team. We'll catch you next time.